Thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressing Republican senators in the United States amid the divisions between the White House and Democratic leadership in America and the Israeli government. We're going to hear why some say election politics is part of the reason. A hostage deal and a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, the U.S. Secretary of State says it's very possible. The surge in stores here in the United States of crime. We're going to take a look at how theft has exploded in big cities, from shoplifting to smash and grab mobs, and how it's costing consumers and the cost is growing. And a new movie with scientific evidence supporting the biblical story of Noah's flood. We're going to bring you a look at this film and what it has to say. All those stories and more ahead today, right now on CBN NewsWatch.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
Going to begin this half hour with the war in Gaza and the divisions between the Israeli government and the Biden administration and the Democratic Party here in the United States. Republican senators now hearing from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu Wednesday about Israel's fight against Hamas. As Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem, that meeting took place amid the White House's disagreement with the Israeli leadership over the direction of the war.
The meeting with the senators came just days after Senator Majority Chuck Schumer called Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu an obstacle to peace and for a change in leadership.
I made it clear to him that it's not the business of the United States to be giving a Democratic ally advice about when to have an election or what kind of military campaign they may be conducting.
Senator Schumer clarified his remarks to reporters.
Well, let me say this. I gave this speech out of a real love for Israel. And if you read the speech, we called only for there to be an election after the hostilities had declined, after Hamas was defeated.
Republicans charged the upcoming presidential election prompted Schumer's speech. Wyoming Senator John Barrasso, referring to the Middle East two-state solution, said, "In my opinion, the two states they're most worried about are Michigan and Nevada, which are states that Biden is very worried about in terms of his own reelection." House Speaker Mike Johnson confirmed he's considering asking Netanyahu to address Congress, but he'll need Schumer's agreement. Netanyahu said he told President Biden in a phone call this week that he'll do what's right for Israel.
As I said, there were times we agreed with our friends and there were times we did not agree with them. In the end, we always did what was essential for our safety, and we will do so this time as well.
Netanyahu also said it will take some time before Israel's military launches its offensive in Rafah. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Wednesday the U.S. has submitted a draft resolution to the UN Security Council that calls for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza that's tied to the release of hostages held by Hamas. UNICEF spokesman James Elder lamented especially about the plight of child hostages.
I mean, you cannot take children hostages somewhere in a tunnel. The torment for those children, the torment for their families in Israel has to come to an end.
Meanwhile, in the north, the IDF announced a new brigade to counter the threat of Hezbollah and provide defensive and offensive measures on the Lebanon and Syrian fronts.
And Chris Mitchell joins us now from Jerusalem. So, Chris, Republican senators heard from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, but Democratic leader Chuck Schumer said Democratic senators will not hear from him. How is all of this being received in Israel?
Well, Ephraim, I would say for the most part, Israelis really didn't appreciate Schumer's speech. Even if they disagree with Prime Minister Netanyahu, I don't think they want the U.S. or any country, for that matter, interfering with their own government or telling them when they should or shouldn't have elections. I think they would likely appreciate if Netanyahu could speak to Democrat senators, too, and make Israel's case. Schumer said it shouldn't be partisan, but some Israeli would say, I think, bipartisan if Schumer would allow Netanyahu to speak both to Republican and Democrat senators as well. And as we showed in our story, you know, Senator John Barrasso told him that maybe it's a Democratic election campaign strategy about two states, Michigan and Nevada, that really matter a lot to the Democrats because they're losing support among key voters, Arab Americans there in Michigan in particular, and a lot of the the support by the White House for Israel is being seen by some of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party as something that the White House shouldn't be supporting. So Democrats in the presidential election campaign really plays a major role in what's happening here in Israel as well as Washington, D.C.
Chris, Netanyahu is now saying it's going to take some time until Israel launches its offensive in Rafah. Is that Israel's decision, or is it because of the Biden administration's interference with the war in Gaza?
I think it's both, Ephraim. I would say the Biden administration has been very public about its opposition to the offensive in Rafah. They want a credible plan to protect the more than 2 million people they say are there in Rafah. The sense here in Israel is that they don't want to publicly oppose the U.S. by going into Rafah. Certainly the rhetoric is going back and forth between the White House, President Biden, and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. But I think Israel wants to refrain from going in on the offensive militarily until this public dispute is settled between the White House and the Netanyahu government. And I think that's why Ron Dermer, he's the Strategic Affairs Minister, Zaki Hanigbi, he's the National Security Advisor. They're in Washington right now meeting with Biden officials to resolve these differences, and we'll see how that transpires in the next few days.
Watching that for sure. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is headed back to Israel again. He says a ceasefire deal is very much possible. What's the outlook for a hostage deal and ceasefire?
Well, according to Blinken, the gaps are narrowing. He says it's getting closer. Israeli officials are not so optimistic about that. We've heard those optimistic comments before without anything developing. It's been months since, the last hostage deal. In the meantime, people are continuing to pray for those hostages. About 134 still held by Hamas. About 30 of those tragically have died. We have personally met with a number of those family members of the hostages. It's really such a time of anguish for them. And that's why today, from at 5:30 here local time, 11:30 on the East Coast, there's a global day of prayer for peace for Jerusalem, for Israel, for the IDF soldiers, for the release of the hostages. People are praying the Shema. It's a prayer said by Jewish people 3 times a day, and they'll be reciting that here on the Western Wall in Jerusalem and around the world.
The Wall Street Journal reports Israel is quietly developing a plan that would use Palestinians who oppose Hamas to distribute aid in Gaza, and that could lead to them running Gaza after the war. How is that plan being viewed in Israel?
Well, first of all, Hamas is violently opposing this, or anybody or any opposition to their control. What this would do would give control of distributing the aid going into Gaza right now to Palestinians not necessarily affiliated with Hamas. And then the idea would they would assume authority to govern Gaza after this. It's a plan to fill that leadership vacuum in Gaza after the war. Apparently, it's not supported by Netanyahu since the plan involves some people from Fatah, which is a rival party to Hamas, but they're also involved in terror. And in the meantime, Hamas is targeting anybody or any group suspected of working with Israel in a plan like this.
We understand Hezbollah is ramping up its terrorist forces in Beirut. Are there still concerns that Israel might get into a full-scale, blown-up war with Hezbollah?
Definitely, we were up on the Syrian border just last Thursday. We were in a city called Kiryat Shimon, about 6 miles from the Lebanese border. Most of the residents of there have evacuated. We talked to a reserve colonel, an IDF colonel in intelligence, and he was saying that 80,000 people have evacuated along the Lebanese border. He says, imagine Florida. If you had 80,000 people evacuating, would you accept that? So he thinks eventually Israel's going to have to go to war to be able to have those tens of thousands of Israelis go back to their homes.
Chris Mitchell from Jerusalem, thanks as always for your insights. Stay safe and know that many people back here are praying for you and our staff right there in Israel. Thank you again. Coming up, here in the United States, from shameless shoplifters to smash and grab mobs, retail crime has exploded in big cities, leading businesses to flee and violent outbreaks. We're going to bring you that story when we come back.
Get your daily quick start from CBN News. A quick read on the important news of the day delivered right to your inbox. Stay current on breaking news, politics, and entertainment. Go to quickstart.news and subscribe today.
If you watch the news, you've seen the videos. Mobs breaking into stores, smashing displays, and filling bags with loot. A surge in retail crime has hit cities across America, left them scrambling to find solutions. CBN's Tara Mergener brings us that story now from Washington.
The nation's capital and other big cities see this as a major crime problem. Shoplifting has exploded into large-scale theft, and the often resulting violence is keeping customers away. In the end, it's consumers left holding the bag as prices skyrocket and many stores set up shop somewhere else. You've seen the videos.
You can see right there just clearing the shelves.
From brazen shoplifters to smash and grab mobs, the images are sweeping the internet.
Never before have we seen the number of CEOs, executives, and even community leaders reach out and highlight the dangers that are taking place in the retail industry.
While shoplifting remains a major challenge, a new phenomenon is hitting so-called brick-and-mortar stores.
About 90% of our organized retail crime cases involve some type of online selling platform.
Homeland Security believes that's due to organized criminal gangs with ties to drug trafficking, who steal the merchandise, then sell it online.
They're crime syndicates that could be tied to local gang networks that maybe have established networks either from the Chilean or Colombian threats or Romanian crews coming in from Eastern European that are comfortable in certain cities.
Stores are losing big money, raising prices to cover it, and the greatest cost could be to the safety of workers.
Whether gangs or individuals, 90% of retailers say thieves are much more aggressive now compared to a year ago.
They're getting more comfortable with it because they know that we're not allowed to, that we won't chase after them.
Violent incidents alone are up by more than a third. As a result, stores are cutting hours, adding security and keeping products under lock and key.
You go to a CVS in New York City, everything's locked up. Good luck getting in toothpaste.
CVS is among those closing key locations like this one in Washington, D.C., where thieves recently carried out merchandise in giant trash bags.
52 restaurants to close their doors in Washington, D.C. this year.
The cycle is also affecting eating establishments, with dozens recently closing their doors, citing safety concerns.
Marked police cruisers getting carjacked. Ambulances. We had an American Red Cross van that was supposed to feed the homeless the other day get carjacked.
After years of what critics call soft on crime laws, the Justice Department now plans to deploy resources hoping to reverse the trend. As communities seek solutions, huge financial losses continue to mount. Nationwide, the latest National Retail Federation survey shows more than $100 billion in losses in 2023, $20 billion more than the year before. Still, despite the numbers and viral videos, some industry observers insist there's little data to back up claims retail crime alone is to blame.
I don't think we can reliably say if stores had been reliably reporting it over decades, we could follow the trends. A store can change its policies and all of a sudden you get a whole bunch more, or they could change their policies back and all of a sudden it drops. So I'm kind of suspicious.
There is macroeconomic factors, there is regulatory factors, there is companies' strategic decisions as well. That is all playing a role.
Experts agree American retailers are more vulnerable, with growing numbers unwilling to become the next target. The cost of organized retail crime and shoplifting is soon expected to top $140 billion, with consumers ultimately footing the bill to the tune of $500 per person every year. In Washington, I'm Tara Mergener, CBN News.
Still ahead, a new claim science backs up the Bible and the story of Noah's flood. We're going to hear about a new film with evidence supporting the biblical account of that famous event. We've got the story for you. It's coming up right after this. A new claim: science validates the Bible and Noah's flood. The producer of The Ark and the Darkness, a new movie out this week in theaters nationwide, says he can prove the biblical account of the global catastrophe. On this week's episode of The Global Lane, Dan Biddle contends the best evidence is found in fossilized dinosaur bones.
You look at dinosaurs from a microscopic perspective. Over the last 50 years or so, there's been 120 peer-reviewed science journals that have substantiated 16 different varieties of bioorganic tissues that have been found in dinosaurs, indicating that they really can't be millions of years old. From a large scale, we just have the extent of the dinosaur fossil record. So, for example, in the middle of America, actually covering about 1/5 of continental United States, about 20%. We have the Morrison Formation, which is 13 interconnected states spanning over 600,000 square miles, and it's filled with dead dinosaurs, filled with marine life, all mixed up together. How could you do that without a worldwide flood? Because this formation's 300 feet thick, worth of a mud pancake. So a 300-foot thick mud pancake spread over 13 states definitely screams, Noah's flood.
Well, I've always found it astonishing, amazing, that some scientists reject the idea that the flood happened on a global scale when, as you say, we've got fossilized evidence of sea creatures discovered on North American mountaintops. So tell us more about that, the marine life and the fossil evidence.
You know, what's really amazing is it's not just North America. It's pretty much every continent has high mountain ranges, and there are sea life fossilized on the tops of mountaintops. You've got, Mount Everest at 29,000 feet high. There's fossilized limestone up there with marine life that just goes for spans. Most high mountain ranges have sea life from the tectonics that were going on during the flood and immediately after. So it's quite an obvious thing. It's not just America, it's every continent. Scientists have got it down to what we call the 6 SLOS mega sequences. We can now really pin what happened in the flood, the different stages that it went through, but it produced billions of dead things buried in rock layers laid down by water all over the earth.
And those who doubt the biblical account point out there are about 8 million species of animals in the world, and the ark was about 1.5 football fields in length and taller than a 4-story house. So still, how could Noah possibly fit all those animals onto an ark and feed them for a year? How do you respond to that?
Yes, we get that a lot. Well, let's just take a quick review of 4 different animal varieties. If you have dogs, there's 339 breeds of dogs, but they all go back to a pair of wolves, Canis lupus. If you look at the horse kind, same thing, 335 breeds of horses, but they're all interfertile. They're all the same kind. Chickens, 68 breeds of chickens. They're all still interfertile. All you need is a set of chickens. Look at the bear family, the Ursidae family. There's 5 of the 8 species in the bear family are still interfertile. You can take a black bear and breed it with a brown bear and breed it with a polar bear. So when you quickly scale back the animal tree like that, going from 300 dog breeds down to a pair and 68 chickens to a pair, you can reduce all the animals that you need on the ark just about 7,000 and put them on the ark just 4,500 years ago. They get off the ark and rapidly speciate afterwards. But you can reduce the number of animals needed on the ark to just about 7,000.
Why do you think more churches aren't studying or teaching these biblical truths about the Great Flood?
I think the main reason is because their members come in and they're saturated with the world's view on biology and the age of the earth and dinosaurs, and that's such a shock effect to people to go through the learning process of releasing the world's narrative of who we are, where we came from, how we got here, and taking on and embracing the biblical narrative. It takes time and it takes the Holy Spirit to help people understand that that the Bible's version of Earth history is a true one, and to shed the world's one. And sometimes for new believers, it's a really shocking, hard thing to go through.
Dan, what's the takeaway then, quickly? What do you want people to come away with after viewing the film?
I think it's really straightforward. Our message is to wake people up, to help them understand that Noah's flood is real history. God judged the world in the past, and there's going to be a future judgment coming, and we want them to be ready for it. That's why we present the gospel in the film in a really strong way.
Okay, where can people see the film?
They can go to noahsflood.com, so plural, but without the apostrophe S, so just noahsflood.com, and you can click there to see showtimes. Ticket sales are going crazy. There's a number of theaters that are selling out, so I would recommend getting your tickets quickly, but we're in about 1,000 theaters nationwide this Wednesday, March 20th, and Thursday, the 21st only.
Okay, the film is The Ark and the Darkness, Unearthing the Mysteries of Noah's Flood. Dan Biddle, thank you for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Also on this week's episode of The Global Lane is North Korea on the precipice of war, and the Christian artist who was reported to police for voicing her views on gender confusion. You can watch The Global Lane this evening on the CBN News Channel. It begins at 8 Eastern. You can also see it on CBN News' app as well as on YouTube. We'll be right back with an encouraging word for your Thursday. Stay with us.
Download the CBN News app, 24/7 news from a Christian perspective at home or on the road. One place for all of your news. Breaking news alerts. Set daily prayer goals and pray for news stories. Read the most important news and watch CBN News Channel live. CBN News, because truth matters. Go to cbnnewsapp.com to get the app today.
Get the inside scoop on Washington politics from the DC Debrief podcast. Don't miss this unique CBN News perspective straight from the nation's capital, because truth matters.
It is time now for your Thursday Thankful, and today I leave you with this prayer of gratitude. Father, thank you for second chances. Your grace comes with a new opportunity to begin again. You never grow tired of giving me another chance to do better, to be better, to live better. And with that prayer, I hope you'll make today a better day, a Thursday filled with Thanksgiving. Well, that will do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. You can always find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel. You can find them there at any time as well as online. That address is cbnnews.com. Take a moment. Let us know what you think about the stories you've seen here today or any day. You can email us, newswatch@cbn.com. You can also reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. We certainly would love to hear from you. Looking forward to seeing you right back here, same time tomorrow. Goodbye. God bless. Thank you for watching.